Hey everybody, I'm Kenna, and welcome to What Really Happened. So today we're starting off with a case that literally haunts me. This case is 27 years old, it is unsolved, and I have all the questions. I have all the questions on everything, so please, at the end of the video, comment what you think. Comment what you think happened. If you agree or disagree with what I think, let me know. So like I said, today we are going to be talking about a case that is 27 years old. It is what really happened to Blair Adams. So on July 11th, 1996, Blair Adams' body was found 4,000 miles away at a construction site just 40 miles east of Knoxville, Tennessee. As the last few days of Blair's life were pieced together by police, it brought more questions than answers. So here is what really happened to Blair Adams. Robert Dennis Blair Adams, who went by Blair, was born December 28th, 1964 in Surrey, British Columbia. Blair had a fairly normal life up until July of 1996. So Blair worked for a family-owned construction company. His family owned the construction company. They were based out of Surrey, British Columbia and Frankfurt, Germany, which is where he met his long-distance girlfriend of a year. Now, I say long distance, but because they worked in Frankfurt as well, there were times where they were together in the same city. I think it depended on where they were working at that point, if they were back in British Columbia or if they were in Frankfurt, Germany at the time working. Blair also had something to be really proud of. According to his mother, Sandra Edwards, Blair had been sober for 2 years and had been religiously attending AA meetings. He had had past struggles with substance abuse disorder, but he had really managed to kind of turn his life around at that point. He was going to meetings religiously. She was very proud of him, and he was very proud of himself, as he should have been. So all in all, at this point, Blair's life seems very normal. He has a job, he has a girlfriend, even though they're long distance at points. He has kind of cleaned up his life a little bit. He is going to AA meetings. He seems like he's on a really good track and doing really well. But then in July of 1996, things kind of began to change. Blair's mother, Sandra Edwards, and his brother, Terry Wellen, both reported that Blair became very stressed. He became very anxious to the extent that they noticed and they questioned him about it. You know, what's going on? But Blair would never tell them. He would never tell them why he was so anxious or stressed or what was going on in his life that was causing this change in him that they were seeing. So July 5th of 1996, Blair goes to the bank and empties his safety deposit box and puts everything that comes out of the safety deposit box into a fanny pack. And what Blair had in the safety deposit box was about $6,000, and again, this is 1996, so that's a good bit of money, in German, US, and Canadian currency, as well as jewelry and gold coins. Puts all of this into a fanny pack, as well as he goes home and he packs a duffel bag. And the duffel bag, he puts documents. I can't find any sources to really tell me what the documents were. I know this is pre-9/11, so I'm not really sure if he feels like he needs them to travel, if he's not coming back, if we're talking like birth certificate, passport maybe, things like that, or if he had something else. It's never really clarified what he packed other than he packed the duffel bag full of documents. So like I said, on July 5th, 1996, Blair empties his safety deposit box and packs. And he packs two things. He packs a duffel bag and a fanny pack. Then on July 6th, Blair quits his job. Some sources say he went and collected his final paycheck and quit. Others say that he went, he quit, and he left. He didn't even get his final paycheck. And just for reference, I'll have all the sources I use down below, so feel free to check those out and look and see for yourself. So on July 6th, Blair quits his job. And some sources say that he went on the 6th and he quit. He didn't get his final paycheck. He just went in, said, "I'm done," and left. Other sources report he went to go get his final paycheck and quit then. And this to me kind of gives a little bit of how stressed he truly was. It shows how stressed he really was. Because again, this is his family's company. Different sources say different things. Some say it was his stepfather's, others just relay it as a family construction company. So this is not like some job that he has where he can go, he can quit, he can be like, peace out, and never see them again. At some point, he's going to have to answer questions. He's going to see these people at family gatherings, and they're going to be like, what's going on? Why did you dip? So I feel like the stress there had to be a lot for him to just be like, bye. The other thing about the job is he was a construction foreman. So he was responsible for like making sure the sites were secure at the end of the day and things like that. Up until this point, he had been really good about doing that. But in the past month, there was some talk about, him leaving construction sites unlocked at night. It leaves that site open to theft and vandalism and all these things. And again, before this, he had been really good about, there were no complaints about him doing his job. He seemed to do it well, and was responsible. And then all of a sudden, whatever is happening in his life it has stressed him to where he's not even performing his job well. His family is noticing a change. Something is happening. So again, on the 5th, he empties his safety deposit box. On the 6th, he quit his job. And then the next few days are really where things kind of get bizarre. So for the next few days, Blair made anywhere, from my sources, say 2 to 5 times, Blair tried to cross the Canadian border into the US. And he was unsuccessful in all of those attempts. He tried by foot, he tried driving across. He even at one point went to a friend and was like, look, someone's trying to kill me. I need you to drive me across into the US. And for whatever reason, they couldn't do that at the time, and it didn't happen. There's also another interesting aspect to this part of Blair's journey. There was a report of a stolen car. And Blair was actually found trying on foot to cross into the US near the stolen car that had been wrecked. So he was never questioned. It was never really said, hey, we think Blair stole this car, but it always kind of crops up in the sources and different materials. Like if you listen to podcasts, they kind of talk about it. Was he so desperate to cross, to get out of Canada, that he stole a car? Again, he was never charged. It's just all speculation on that. But again, looking at what state of mind he's in, he is desperate. He is desperate to get out of Canada. He's told a friend someone's trying to kill him. He's stressed and he's anxious. A lot of the sources go into a little more detail as to why it was so hard for him to cross the border. Again, remember, he's got this fanny pack with, his mother estimated $6,000 worth of different currencies and jewelry and gold coins. He also had some past drug offenses, some drug charges. So again, it's harder for him to cross because, again, he is stressed. He is anxious. I'm sure it's showing. If his family is seeing it, I'm sure, people like Border Patrol that are talking to him can see this man is nervous. He's got a ton of cash on him, and he has previous drug charges. They think he is trafficking drugs. So he cannot get across the border, and he is getting more desperate. So finally, on July 9th, he has spent at least 2 full days trying to cross into the US. On July 9th, he goes to the Vancouver airport and he rents a Nissan Altima. And he drives from Vancouver to Seattle, where he goes to the airport. Now, on this point, my sources aren't super clear as to when Blair acquires these tickets, if it was at Vancouver, if it was at Seattle. But when he gets to Seattle airport, Blair has a round-trip ticket to Frankfurt, Germany, which again isn't super weird. He works there. But what happens next is a little strange. So what Blair does is he goes and he checks into this flight for Frankfurt, Germany, but he doesn't board the plane. Instead, he goes and he purchases a one-way ticket to DC. So again, we've finally gotten into the US. It seems like we're gonna go to Frankfurt, Germany, but we decide last minute, or maybe this was the plan all along, to check in and not board that plane, but instead go to DC. Now, Unsolved Mysteries, some of the detectives on Blair's episode talk a lot about, this ticket to DC, because it was a one-way ticket, was double the price of a round-trip ticket. Why didn't he just buy the round-trip ticket? I personally feel like he's stressed. He wants to get as far away from Canada as possible. I'm not sure that him paying for the one-way ticket versus the round trip is that big of a deal. And then I kind of wonder if he just maybe didn't want anyone to think he was coming back, that he was fleeing from whatever was causing all these issues in his life at the moment. So between July 9th and 10th, Blair ends up in Washington, D.C. And at the airport, he rents a second car. This car is a Toyota Camry. And Blair begins to drive from D.C. south. In interviews with his mother, Sandra Edwards, she says Blair has no connections to the Southeast. He doesn't know anybody. He has no reason to be there. It's just really confusing as to what he's going, where he's going, if he has a destination in mind, or if he's, again, just trying to get as far away from Canada as he possibly can. Another strange thing that happens during this time, when Blair rents the Toyota Camry, so the rental contract, the signature is not his name. So there's speculation early on that he was not alone. And you really only see this in the news articles that are, a couple days, a couple weeks after they find him. You never really see it later on in the investigation. I think at this point it's basically known that he was alone. My personal thoughts on this are, you have a man who, whether the threat is imagined or real, he's scared and he's running and he doesn't want anybody to know where he is. I think my personal opinion, and this is just my personal opinion, so take that with a grain of salt, is that he signed a different name so that it couldn't be traced back to him. Again, this is pre 9/11, you have to show ID and all these things to rent cars. I don't know how strict it was at that point in 1996. If you could get away with, hey, this is my name, sign it, get the car keys. I don't know. If you do, let me know below. So the strangest part of Blair's journey to me happens on July 10th. So on July 10th, Blair is on I-40 in Tennessee near Knoxville. He's about 40 miles east. He stops at the Strawberry Plains exit. I'm going to try and put some Google Earth images up. I have one from 1998 just because I couldn't find one for 96, and then present day. So Strawberry Plains is an unincorporated part of Knox County, Tennessee. There's not a lot there then or now. This exit mainly has a handful of motels, a big gas station like one that long haul truckers would use. So like it's like a truck stop gas station. Like a Cracker Barrel, a few little things that you would find on, an exit like that. Nothing, it's not a big place. There's not a lot there. So Blair stops at this exit to get gas. He pumps his gas, he goes in, he pays. When he comes back out, his Toyota Camry will not start. He can't get it to start. He goes back in and he uses the phone to call a tow company. Because at this point, the rental places are closed, so he can't really get help from them or anything like that. When the tow truck gets there and comes to help him, the driver realizes that Blair does not have a key to a Toyota Camry. What he has that he's trying to start this Toyota Camry with is the key from the Nissan Altima that he rented in Vancouver. Now, the tow truck driver, asked Blair, check your pockets, make sure, you didn't just grab the wrong key, because, you got it here, you had the key. And at this point, Blair refuses. And there's a lot of speculation about this, about why he would refuse. I personally, again, this is my personal opinion and nothing else, is that he had a lot of money on him. He had a lot of cash on him. Maybe he had something in his pocket that he didn't want this tow truck driver to know that he had that much cash. Or maybe he had something else he didn't want him to know that he had. I'm not really sure, but I feel like the best explanation still is that this key is somewhere on him probably, but he's misplaced it. But it is just really strange that he, wouldn't look. To the extent that he got the car towed. It wasn't even I guess I must be using the wrong key. You can go and then check his pockets or his stuff after the tow driver had left. Now, this tow truck driver actually did an interview with Unsolved Mysteries. And on this interview, he said Blair didn't seem impaired in any way from substances, but it did seem like his mind just wasn't quite right at that point. And again, this is a stressed man. He is desperate to get away from something. Again, whether that's real or imagined, he is trying his best. He is trying his best to leave. So the tow truck takes the car to a local body shop until they can figure out what to do about this key. He also takes Blair to a Fairfield Inn at the Strawberry Plains exit. Now, Unsolved Mysteries did an interview with the front desk person at the Fairfield Inn where Blair was dropped off. And according to them, Blair walked in and out of this lobby 5 to 6 times. He walked in, he walked out, he seemed very paranoid, he was looking around. He finally decides to get a room, and he pays for the room in cash and leaves his change. Now, when I saw this, I was like, okay, he left his change. Like, I'm not one to carry coins. I hate that. They're heavy, they're loud. I just don't like it. But his change was over $50. Like, it was a good amount of cash for the time, and especially if you're fleeing from something you would think you would want to kind of save and be kind of frugal because it's got to last you. I'm not really sure if it's a big deal or not, but it is another odd thing that happened. So he rents the room. He doesn't go to the room. He walks back out, and that was the last that she saw him. Now, Blair's movements that night in Strawberry Plains haven't really been accounted for. They think he went to Cracker Barrel and had dinner, but otherwise, there's not a lot of information on that. What is known is that at 7:30 a.m. the next morning, across I-40 from the Fairfield Inn where he got the room, he never really stayed there, Blair's body was found at a construction site for another motel. The construction crew thought he was a homeless man at first and then realized it was a body and called police. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I am going to explain how he was found. And there was some speculation of some other things, so just bear that in mind. Trigger warning if you want to skip ahead through this. Blair had been brutalized, for lack of a better term. There were patches of his hair missing. He was undressed. There was speculation of a sexual assault at that point. The autopsy later determined that he was not sexually assaulted, but the investigation did say the way his socks and his pants were removed, and again, I'm not really sure how they can tell this, but apparently they can, that they had been removed from him. He had not taken them off. They had been removed from him. So again, he has patches of hair missing. He has cuts and abrasions all over him, especially defensive cuts. He has a long strand of hair in one of his hands. He's clenching it. But the worst part, in my opinion, he did have some blunt force trauma to the head, but he had been hit so hard in the stomach that it ruptured his stomach. Blair died of sepsis. He died of sepsis because someone hit him so hard his stomach ruptured. And I don't know if you know anything about sepsis, that it would be a horrible way to die. It would be a horrible way to die. He would not die immediately. He would feel, aside from being brutalized the way he was, he would feel sick. He would feel so sick and I'm sure scared. So I do want to point out again that the autopsy revealed no sexual assault. The autopsy also revealed his tox screen was clean. He had no drugs in his system. Now, again, I realize that tox screens don't screen for everything. There are things that can slip through those cracks. I know that tox screens don't test for everything. There are things that can slip through those cracks that don't get caught unless you're looking for them. But overall, his tox screen did come back clean, which I think is important. I think it's important to point out that just because someone has a past issue with substance abuse, don't write it off as a relapse. Something happened to this man. Something horrible happened to this man. And I feel like at first it was looked at as, oh, another alcoholic, another junkie. They had a relapse and got themselves in trouble. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true in a lot of cases. And I feel like, with everything that his mother said about how proud she was and how proud he was of his sobriety, I don't know, I just feel like it's important, even in his death, to recognize that this is a crazy story. Whatever happened to him is crazy. But he was sober. So now I'm going to go back a little bit to the crime scene. Just because I've told you about how Blair was brutalized, this was horrendous. But again, he had this fanny pack full of money. He had this duffel bag full of documents. Both are at the scene. There's about $4,000 in German, Canadian, and US currency, as well as jewelry and gold coins scattered around his body. He has receipts from his travels from Vancouver to where he is now, just east of Knoxville, and they account for the kind of the rest of the missing money from what his mother, Sandra Edwards, thought that the estimate was about $6,000. He has $4,000 around his body, as well as a Toyota Camry key. It is found at the scene. So this case keeps my mind spinning with questions. Just because, again, we're 27 years later, and that mother never got closure, that brother never got closure. No one has faced any kind of charges for what happened to Blair Adams, but there is still a ton of speculation around his case. You have people who believe he had some type of mental breakdown, or he started using something again or drinking again. All these things. Personally, I tend to fall into the camp of, did he have something he wasn't supposed to? As far as, again, those documents in the duffel bag, they're just documents. They never really say what they are. And if he did have something he was not supposed to have, would the police even be aware of it when they went through what was there? You know, all the money was pretty much accounted for, but how do you know about the documents? And again, even if it's not the documents, if he had made someone so angry that they were going to kill him like he thought, and it wasn't just in his head. The reason I'm inclined to think that Blair really was running from a true threat, whether that was, you know, because he had something, because he did something, whatever the reason. I simply think so because, first of all, he was stressed. And a lot of people can chalk that up to basically a mental breakdown. He is overstressed, he's overworked, his mind just kind of snapped. And that's fine. At the beginning, I can totally see that. I can see that, you know, here's a man who is extremely stressed, extremely nervous. I'm sure his nerves were frayed, and the wear was beginning to show. What makes me think that there was a real threat to Blair Adams is the fact that all the money was there. That kills me. That kills me. Because again, you're in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee. You're 40 miles east of Knoxville. So let's say he did meet someone at dinner. He did run into somebody. He made somebody angry. Whatever. First of all, the murder was extremely brutal. It was, you know, in my opinion, I am not law enforcement. I'm not anything like that. So take everything I say that is my opinion with a grain of salt. It was brutal. It was brutal. It was not quick and easy. It was not painless. In my opinion, that seems like somebody wanted him to pay for something, whatever that something was. And again, the money. There is $4,000 in jewelry and coins scattered around his body. Now, if you just meet someone randomly, the best motive, in my opinion, is robbery. But they didn't take anything, or anything that was noticed. Let me put it that way again. Because again, we don't know what documents were there. But then, so again, I've kind of stated my case of, I personally think he was running from a very real threat. But then I go back to, okay, this is 1996. Now, I was 6 in 1996. I feel like beepers were a thing. I feel like if cell phones were a thing, it was like the very beginning of them, kind of people having them, the old Nokia like brick looking phones. And it may have been a little earlier for that. If you remember, if you were older in 1996 and remember what technology was more so, because again, this is coming from a 6-year-old, and I'm not sure I really paid that much attention to it. But what I do know for sure is that having a phone attached to your hand with internet connection, texting, and basically calling anytime, 24/7, was not a thing. So how did someone follow him from, again, remember, he is 4,000 miles away from home. They followed him from 4,000 miles. He acted like he was going to go to Frankfurt, Germany, didn't. Went to Washington, rented a car, drove south basically until he needed to get gas. But then the key goes missing there, and that's where he's found. So did something actually really happen with the key? Or did he just have it, and at that point his mind is just so stressed out that he couldn't find it? I really don't know. I really don't know. And this case, again, literally haunts me because we're 27 years later. We're 27 years later, and no one knows what happened to Blair Adams. Well, they know what happened to Blair Adams. They don't know why it happened. There's actually a news article from the Tennessean, and it will be linked below. I used it as a source. One of the sheriffs in Knox County, their explanation for all of this was Blair had a date with fate. And he actually goes on to say that he didn't know if it would ever be solved. And so far, that is self-fulfilling prophecy. It has not been solved. This family has to deal with this terrible tragedy that has happened to them and not know why, not know what was going on. They all kind of saw the anxiety, the stress, and Blair struggling, and were unable to help him. And to me, that is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And I personally can't think of anything worth hurting someone like that for. To chase them 4,000 miles and then to hurt them so badly, it blows my mind. And I think that's why this case sticks with me so much and always has, because there's so many questions, and all of them seem almost conspiracy theory-like. All of them seem as crazy as the first. Nobody took the money, the Toyota key missing, and then it's there. And there are some simple explanations for some things, like the key. He had it, he lost it, he found it. But being somewhere where nobody knew he was going to be and ending up murdered with $4,000 still. Like, I could understand robbery, I guess. This case just, it keeps my mind on a loop constantly. It keeps my head spinning with questions of what really happened to Blair Adams. And I know I can't be the only one. I know this family is hurting and wants answers. So if you or anyone you know has any information about the murder of Blair Adams, please contact the Knoxville police, and I will have contact info for them below. There is a number and an email address. So please reach out to them. But that is it for today, guys. Let me know what you think. What do you think happened? Do you think he was running from something real? Do you think he had some sort of break from stress? And if he did have a break from stress, what happened in Knoxville or outside of Knoxville? I just don't know.